Thank you very much, gentlemen. The meeting of the Tree Commission, Shade Tree Commission can now come to order. And we have a, let's see, an agenda that has been modified a little bit by a tree permit application that came in. So we'll wait a moment for Lee to settle in. We perhaps should introduce ourselves one time for the public, just names around the table. I'm Alvy McWilliams. I'm the chair of the Athens Shade Tree Commission, and we have some liaison here too. But we'll start this in with Lee.
Lee Gregg, I'm a member of the Tree Commission. Tricia Lockman.
John Woodrow, member of the Tree Commission.
David Ingram, a member of the Tree Commission.
Paul Weil, liaison with City Council.
Ron Lucas, interim director of streets.
And Ann Bonner, the urban forester for Southeast Ohio, has arrived, and she is a liaison with the Tree Commission also. We have today a brief announcement to begin with for members of the Tree Commission. The website director, Ron Forrest, asks that Tree Commission members please email him brief bio descriptions so that he can post that on our website. And Ron's email is rforrest@ci.athens.oh.us. Everybody got that?
No.
There you go. And it's nice that we have a website director with the name of Forrest, I think. The first thing on the agenda is a tree permit that we just got yesterday, and so none of us, not even the urban forester, has had a chance to go look at it. And it is at 5 Old Coach Road, a request, a tree permit application by the resident there, Greg Blower, who says that there are 3 pines, large pines, next to his mailbox that are dead, and he asks that they be removed. So we have asked Ann Bonner to do the official assessment of the trees, and we generally abide by Ann's recommendations. She is an arborist and can assess these things more accurately than we, but we also have some input. This is a site where Old Coach Road, I think, has one potential complication, that it is a unique egress for a development at the end, so that may have some implications when you go to look at the site. And I invite everybody on the commission to go have a look at that, please. And I'll pass that around. We have another permit that came in late, and just this morning rather, and it is for 44 Hudson Avenue. And again, we ask the same professional assessment from Ann Bonner, and it is a maple. I'm sorry, that's the mailing address. Forgive me. The location of the tree is 124 North Lancaster. And it is a maple at 124 North Lancaster. Large maple tree on the edge of the yard near the sidewalk. Part of the tree is leaning toward the house, and some limbs have fallen. And then there's an attachment here.
And we know it's in the right of way, do we?
And it says, yes, it is in the right of way. Okay. Code Enforcement Officer Brian Zulek went and checked the site and says it is in the right of way. So this is a request for removal. That's true. So again,
some limbs have rotted and fallen.
Yes.
The comment.
Sorry, I'm having a bifocal problem here. So I will circulate this tree permit also, and we will get email response from Ann, and then we will make a decision within the next week. And let's see, the next item on the agenda is let's see, the AEP planting with the Near East Side Neighborhood Association. These are AEP helping with paying for replanting in sites where there have been prunings for power lines. There's been aggressive pruning for power lines, and there are some residents who would like to have some replacements, and AEP is offering, let's see, what is the arrangement?
I think it's 50% from AEP, 25% from the Near East Side Neighbourhood Association, and 25% from the property owner.
Okay.
So for a quarter of the price of the tree, you can choose from, I believe it was Serviceberry, Virginia, Sweet Bay Magnolia, and
We changed it yesterday because we're not going to do the white. We're going to do witch hazel.
okay.
Can't remember what. What was some of the other trees? Oh, redbud was one that Gosh, I can't remember. There's another one.
Anyway, they were all small trees. That it was decided to offer only 3. So it was the choice.
Oh, the Winter King hawthorn. That was the one. We thought that was a little bit of a bigger tree, something different than the other two. So.
Yeah, and these are all small trees appropriate for under power lines.
Yes, yeah. And this is a chance, guys, if you know anybody in the Near East Side. I called some people yesterday who we have worked with just over the years, and from my understanding, AEP was going to be a little bit, be flexible, and these are opportunities to plant some really nice flowering trees. And otherwise, Floyd Place is so, call people. Take advantage.
Could you say the 3 types of trees again? Hawthorn?
Hawthorn, serviceberry,
Serviceberry.
And the Sweet Bay
Magnolia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And the hawthorn and Sweet Bay Magnolia tend to want to be shrubby, tall shrubs, more than one, multiple stem trees, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So the hawthorn is probably the only choice there with one single stem.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
And Ed Baum is taking the information on this, so Ed Baum is the person to contact.
Yeah.
And
And the reason we're involved is that some of the sites may involve right-of-way issues, and so they'll have to get permission of the Tree Commission to plant them.
yeah.
Yeah, so he'll get us, he said he thought he could get us a list of potential planting sites by Sunday.
Oh,
And then that way we can make sure that if there are right-of-way issues or anything, well, plenty of time before the proposed planting is April 29th.
Mhm.
So.
Yes, this is the official Athens Beautification Day, right?
Yes. Yep.
So you get bodies there, huh?
Yep.
Oh, okay. And for people who may be watching and on the east side want to contact Ed Baum, it is B as in boy, AUM as in man, at ohiou.edu.
He'll love that.
Boy to man.
Yeah.
So that's Baum at ohio.edu. And that's a very wonderful offer. We've got some more AEP things in this line of the agenda. Steve Standley, the forestry person for AEP, had hoped to be here this morning, and he may yet be able to shake himself loose from his projects, but in his absence, it should be noted that American Electric Power has arranged for replacements of 10 trees along the bike path, and Candy, has the purchase order happened on this for Five Springs Farm yet? They were AEP was going to reimburse the city for 10 trees being ordered from
Yes, we
Five
did do
Springs.
that. I have that at my desk.
Great, okay. The trees in question are trees that are basically behind the Social Security office, the CVS, along between those buildings and the bike path, and then moving further to the west, there were some trees in that area too, and they're taking down small trees, and they're putting 5 bald cypress and 5 pin oaks, which are better trees than what was there, in truth. I can't remember what was there, but there was only one tree of any distinction, a very small sycamore, and the rest were, so this is an upgrading, very nice one.
But it'll take a while for the upgrading to have the environmental impact.
Exactly. I think they were box elder, and they were pretty big, and so they really were trees doing serious work, and these are going to be pretty small for a while, and they have to survive too. There is one last AEP replacement, and it involves a large oak at 173 East State Street, and there may be a communication problem holding this up. The resident at that site was very much interested in having AEP take down what remains of that tree. It's a big pin oak in front of a Georgian Revival house, wood frame house, and the western face of it has just been shorn, and it is just unsightly. Some people thought perhaps unsafe, but perhaps that may or may not be the case. The tree will never recover its profile. It will always be ugly as sin. And so the AEP, through Steve Standley, had said that the possibility of having that tree simply taken down is by AEP, and to have them replace it with a really nice tree is what's going to happen. And the trees that are going to be chosen, let's see, the house, the residents may have a green pillar, pyramidal type of oak. They would buy one themselves to put in the yard to have a symmetrical balance. AEP takes down the disfigured oak and plants another green pillar on the other side, so the site would be restored. And this offers the potential of an Arbor Day planting site. It might be, unless somebody has a better one.
The only concern is that, is this going to be a tree that can be a problem for AEP in the future?
It would probably be planted further back, and the pyramidal profile is...
So just by better location and then choosing the pyramidal profile,
Yeah.
which could work.
Is it a smaller oak? Is that a
It's
smaller
green-
supposed to be somewhat smaller and
Smaller.
and tight, compact form. So
Right.
by then, maybe the
Is this-
city will have underground wires in this area.
Is this in a tree
I always
lawn?
hope.
Pardon me?
Is this in a street lawn?
There's a wide right-of-way on East State at
There
this
really
point.
isn't, it's behind the sidewalk.
It's behind the sidewalk, okay. Just wondering, assessing its chances for achieving good growth, you know.
Yeah, God, those wires are, they're big there too. I mean, they seem to cut pretty aggressively there.
Well, are there any questions on that E AEP?
I do think that there were some other property owners that contacted AEP as a result of the newspaper article, and I think some of those big old maples that were featured in the pictures, I think that AEP would be removing those as well. So I think people are just contacting AEP directly if they want their trees cut down.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them have been repeatedly topped
Yeah.
and are in very
Yeah.
bad shape.
Was there a hornbeam along that road as well that was
Oh, gosh, I hope not. On East State Street?
yes, we close to this location. It's on the odd-numbered side.
On the same side as the pin oak? A hornbeam, I don't...
No, you don't think so? Okay. Yeah. So
There
somebody
were some
asked me
nice
if
sugar
there
maples
was-
that were cut back
Okay.
pretty hard, and then a big thornless honey locust that's just
Okay.
east of there.
Okay.
So I don't suppose if these people are contacting AEP directly that we will hear anything? I mean,
Only if they're in the
officially.
right-of-way.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
If they're in city right-of-way, then we get consulted.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So so you think some of these trees are not in the right of way then?
It's conceivable people will have things planted in.
If-
I've told them, if they're in the right of way, you need to contact the city.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of them aren't, actually.
Okay.
You know, there's some alleys and,
Mm-hmm.
when I say a lot, I think that there were maybe 2 or 3 people that called to
Yeah.
inquire about the
Yeah.
possibilities of having their trees removed.
So what about alleys?
Well, the alley itself is a right-of-way. The argument is that the trees are often off the right-of-way, but they're then intruding by their growth into
Right.
the area where the cables are, and that gives AEP the authority to go and do
So
what they do.
is just the alley the right of way, or is there any?
Depends. I mean, there's an alley that we looked at near Morris Avenue recently that is paved 10 feet wide, but the right-of-way is 20 feet wide.
Okay.
So you can't be sure exactly how wide it is. You need to look at the GIS maps, and you can figure it out from that sometimes.
And people interested in
So
knowing
they can measure.
Yeah.
where the right-of-way is.
Have to contact the code office.
Okay.
And what they do is, when there's a permit requested, they're pretty good about drawing the specific, outlining for us.
Yeah, probably get good information from code.
Yeah.
All right, then, any other comments in this area? Ron, want to weigh in on right-of-way?
No, you got it under control, I think.
Okay. See, there was, last time on the agenda, there was something from the request of the water polo team to have projects. I think actually the water polo team at this point has got a full agenda.
Okay.
Do you get that impression? Paul?
Yeah.
But does it include planting trees?
I thought it did,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen their full list
Yeah.
yet. Okay,
I want
so.
to make sure tree planting's like up there, especially if we have all these trees to plant.
One topic that did come up was the idea of getting some more balanced pruning on some of the streets. That have
Oh,
been-
yeah,
Where they
Morris.
prune particularly on the street side. The sidewalk side has not been pruned, and some of the trees look a little bit out of balance. It's
Yeah.
a minor issue, but that, if we
That
had
would be-
people who could be supervised in groups of 2s and 3s
Yes.
by one of us, we might be able to do something like that.
These would be smaller trees.
Yeah, smaller trees you can easily reach.
I think it's dangerous to have volunteers prune. I just think handling saws, number one, there's probably liability, but number two, I think that, again, we're trying to emphasize that this is part of the city's infrastructure and it needs to be cared for, just like care for the streets and the sidewalks. And we have somebody from the city, who is working really hard to become a certified arborist and take on those duties. And it's not something I think that, I don't know, maybe that's something where we could be inventorying which trees they could write down, walk the streets and then get that to the guys that actually have been pruning. Just to make sure there's some consistency in who's doing the work and.
That's a
You
good
don't
idea.
think we should
Yeah,
just
that
maybe
is, it really is a good use of
chainsaw?
volunteers.
Actually, most of these are very small branches. They're
I
usually
know, I
usually
know.
less than an inch.
But still, it would be, it really would behoove us to have this done professionally and correctly. And
And-
Ron is going to be a certified arborist, so, and he's already got a better, crew. The crew performance on pruning has improved just
Thanks.
incredibly in the last half year.
And the more you do it, the better that they'll become. And again, even some of that fine pruning, those little things, I mean, really, the more that they're touching those trees, the more ownership they have with them over time. And I think, stewardship will just.
Yeah, we don't focus as much on the sidewalk side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
at this
And
point.
as I say, it's a
That's
minor
something
issue,
we-
but eventually we're
we
going to
probably
finish
could-
it with trees that are out of balance because
Yeah.
of the
Well,
way
just
things are growing.
the whole 13 and a half on one side and 8 foot on the
Yeah.
other puts it out of balance,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
something that we can.
Yeah.
But on the positive
Try to
side,
correct.
for the polo team doing something like that, all those people will then emerge with a much better understanding of the importance of trees, probably, certainly how they're, should be pruned. They'll come out with at least some rudimentary information, which could be valuable.
Could we have a mulch, planting and mulching?
Yeah.
It's a little bit lower tech.
Mhm.
Right, and less dangerous all around for
Right.
people and trees.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
even pruning, you can get stuff in your eyes
Yeah.
easily. I mean, look at my hands. I mean,
Yeah.
just trust me on that. Just little things can happen that.
Yes, that's true. I owed my last tetanus shot to a little pruning. So, okay, well, are there people available, assuming that we might get some pruners, to do some work on Saturday, the 29th of April? Who might be available?
I'll be there and I'll bring my tools and stuff.
Okay.
I'll give them this talk.
My tools might be there, but I think I'm going to be out of town.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I likewise am. So.
I'm already committed to a music judging event, so I
Yeah.
can't do that.
So,
I should be available, I think.
okay, so we might have Ann and David. It's April 29th.
Anne would. I
And-
mean, we don't want to forget Emily. She would be.
Oh, yeah.
really good.
Yeah. Probably Emily would. Okay. There's a rendezvous point that was listed in an email from Michael Jones, who's organizing this. It's on the South Green, and I will forward you that email and ask him if that's the appropriate place for people from the Tree Commission to come. And maybe there will be some sort of an orientation before that time with the water polo team members who appear to be the captains of work crews.
How many are there? How many on our team?
25.
Wow.
But they expect to get a bunch of fraternities involved. So the last time they coming from council, or I think the clean committee said they were hoping to get about 200 to 300 people to do this stuff.
Okay.
I don't know, again, we'll wait and see what happens, but that's what they were talking about.
There aren't even that many shovels in town, you know?
Well-
I will be here, Alfie. I
Okay.
will be here.
You will be good. Maybe we should really kind of be organized with,
Right.
between ourselves to really be able to divide labor.
We need a list of projects. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I've yet to see a
But
list, to tell you the
most
truth.
Do they have other projects as well?
Oh, yeah,
yes.
yeah, they want to do like trash can cleaning and painting here and there
So
and stuff.
if we ask, say, well, we would like 5 or 8 or 10, then they can set aside, so to speak.
There are bike path issues that we can do as well, in terms of we need to check all the trees along the bike path, make sure there are none that have those plastic supports tying them. I think they're all off now, but
Excellent.
that needs to
That's
be
a
checked.
great idea.
Oh, that's a simple one, yes.
The other one that they'd suggested, I think, was picking up trash in the
Yeah.
areas along the bike path.
Yeah, I keep promoting that one.
The tree
and they may-
planting, I think, will be, because
Oh,
that's
yeah.
pretty
It's another
labor
one.
intensive and.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if they've really got that in their agenda. The last email I had from Mike Jones,
Yeah,
I
I forget
couldn't
what
really
was in it
tell.
too, yeah.
And they were, they seemed to have a great many, but they were focusing particularly on the West Arts Center
Mhm.
potential landscaping
Mhm.
in one area. But we should, this is just too delicious a chance,
Yeah.
and they may have to rethink some things. The West Arts site has some problems of steep slope to work on,
Mhm.
so that might complicate it. Have you got information on that, Ron?
No, I know that a slope is up there. It's,
Hmm. I know there's going to be work on the Arts West eventually too, for the west side of the building itself, I think. They're talking about trying to make it ADA accessible
Mhm.
for the
Yeah.
basement. So that's going to change. I think you guys looked at the
Yes.
landscaping thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we made a proposed landscaping suggested plan.
And I know the West Side Neighbor Association planted a bunch of daffodils on that hillside, the steep part already.
Yeah.
I see some of them coming up, so
Uh-huh.
we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be a neat site. Yeah, well, I suspect information will be a bit more firm by our next meeting.
I hope so.
So, okay, is there anything else on, anybody?
I just didn't hear, are you going to tell them about our interest in?
Yes, I will tell them that we have a group of 3 tree commission members, and we have some potential projects which include possibly mulching, but the plastic tags removed from trees on the bike path, and even in front of the East State Street Community Center, now that I think of it. So
Yeah, that and planting, I think would be the 2 goals.
And inventorying sites of other pruning might be down there for some
Yeah,
wish
we
list.
can do that.
yeah,
I mean, that's just the case. You need people to walk the streets and note the trees and the locations.
Okay.
We would have to know what to look for the most part, though. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it needs
Well,
a
We
certain.
could just say clearance, though.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
I think,
Yeah.
would that be a good start?
Because
yeah, just give them an 8-foot.
Well,
piece of wood.
Clearance?
I mean,
The side, we can't get under the
Yeah,
tree?
can't get
Okay.
under
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, it's also looking
Needs to be
for
coming up,
trees
needs to go up.
that are out of balance. So we'll have to give them examples of trees that are like that. That's all. And they are pretty obvious once they get to that stage.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You can
yeah.
see it. I think.
Okay. Well, okay, let us move on to the next question. Lowe's planted a bunch of evergreens at the back of their store along the bike path. There's a retaining wall there, I think, which was one of the issues for screening the retaining wall with planting. And there are, it was really a dry summer. Nothing back there got watered.
And almost all of them got.
32, 100% mortality on the arborvitae, or however that's pronounced, 32 totally dead, and then 1 dead spruce counted. So those things need to be replaced, and I guess we need to send an official notification, Candy, from the tree commission. Does that sound?
Do we have any recommendation on what to replace them with? I mean, is arborvitae particularly prone in that site to
You
failure?
know,
or?
ironically, if you look at the South Y, we planted, all the spruce died on that site, and the arborvitae are still alive, so I don't know.
Okay.
You know, maybe red cedar if they can get them. Red cedar's a little bit tougher. It's gonna be pretty like it's pretty alkaline site, I think, just being old railroad bed kind of
Okay.
fill. So maybe red cedar, or, I mean, spruce should do okay. It's just they really, we need, get them in the ground soon and
Yeah.
water them if we go
Yeah.
more than 2
But
weeks without rain.
have you seen the spruce? Do they look as if they've survived well? I mean,
Well,
would it be
no.
better to actually replace the arborvitae with the spruce? Or the,
I think there's another challenge with arborvitae, and it's bagworms, especially when you've got a
Mhm.
monoculture of arborvitae. One gets a bagworm, boy, it'll just move down the whole line.
Yeah.
So I think maybe if they mixed some spruce with some red cedar and maybe
Every
a few
other one?
arborvitae. I don't know if you want to do that, but just having a little bit of diversity in there, even if it's just clusters, might help them do better. And I guess it's just a good argument, if they're worth planting, they're worth watering midsummer. If it goes 2 or 3 weeks without rain, we gotta have a plan, they have to have a plan for watering.
And maybe if it was bagworm, they could be encouraged to watch over that, because that doesn't take long to remove them.
Yeah.
Particularly
I
when-
doubt that's
particularly when
what
they're
killed them.
small.
I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
yeah, that
But-
takes years. That's when you finally get them past the drought issue, about 5 or 6 years in the ground, that's when they start to get bagworms,
Well, maybe it'd be easier for them if we give them a definite recommendation, like to plant, 3 species and have them, alternate, so that they don't have to figure that out for themselves. Do you know what I mean? Because that way, there's less chance of spread.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Okay. Anybody want to?
So we could do, well, we're talking about red cedar is one recommendation.
If they can get them, yeah. They could do red, they could try it with the arborvitae again. You just don't want to have 32 of them right in a row, I don't think.
Okay.
But mixture of, red cedar.
If we could give them 4 species, then they'll want to provide it probably from their own suppliers. So in case
Yeah.
they can't get one, then we could still have a
What's
chance.
another I can't, do they have to be evergreen?
Well, did we say that the spruce was doing, no, we said the arborvitae.
Spruce would be good there.
Okay.
If they could get blue spruce going,
Okay.
it'd be tough.
wasn't there another spruce they had along there as well?
What, was it Norway?
I think it may have been Norway spruce. Yeah.
They're pretty tough. They need
Yeah.
water, though.
Okay.
I mean, they do need.
Watering seems to be a big issue.
Let's throw in one deciduous tree, hawthorn. Can't kill them.
Weed.
Actually,
I mean, it'd be mixed in, the red berries against the
So-
evergreen in the winter.
yeah,
Yeah.
so do we like the idea of the evergreens for shielding? Was that the idea? Or was it, or did they just decide?
I think there's space issues there as well,
Yeah,
because
okay.
you,
'Cause it
you,
was-
you haven't got much space between the bike path and the retaining wall.
Okay.
So they had to do something columnar, I
Yeah.
think is the point.
Mhm. So, and there are hawthorns which are
Yeah.
particularly, what is the one I'm trying, arrow,
I'm not sure.
Indian arrow or something like that, where it's very upright and gorgeous, wonderful berries and.
So we're going to recommend a mixture of things, and possibilities being blue spruce, red cedar, hawthorn, and that everything be columnar.
And they could put in some arborvitae as long as it wasn't,
Yeah, okay,
so they weren't next to each other.
right, but not 32 in a row of something.
Right,
that,
separated.
Yeah, this was a real argument for not doing that massive planting. It was just a stunning 100% mortality. Such a waste.
That's right.
Okay. Well, let's see, that brings us to, if we're done with Lowe's, and we'll send them that, to the subject of Arbor Day, which, in order to keep our Tree City status, we must have an observation of Arbor Day, an official city observation, and we have done it in a variety of ways. Last year, Lowe's contributed a tree. It was planted at the eastern terminal of the bike path, and they watered it some, and I think the city, I think Kevin Schwartzoff went out there and watered a time or two, perhaps Ron, I don't know, were you among the guardian angels of that little tree? We had a wonderful dedication ceremony with small children from, let's see, I think Debbie Phillips' daughter was there, and a neighbor of mine. There were two little 3-year-olds and a stuffed eagle from West Elementary that dedicated a tree with proper mulching techniques. It was the most adorable thing I've ever seen. So that was the most recent, and that was our 15th year's Tree City too. So we had some nice things from the Arbor Day Foundation to present to the city at that time. The ceremony is brief. It doesn't take an awful lot of arranging. There is some press release material that has to go out in advance, but we need basically a tree in the ground on Friday, April 28th, which is Arbor Day.
We could do it the 29th too.
Can we?
Yeah, you don't have to
Have to
do
do
it.
it.
You can, as long as the mayor can proclaim whatever day he wants to be Arbor Day.
That's right, there's power, okay.
Yeah. One of the mayors, I think, from Thornville once, they proclaimed Arbor Day because the application was due December 1st, and I think it was November 29th. They had their Arbor Day program.
That's nice.
So, so we're flexible about that.
So we could combine it with that beautification day
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
the following day then.
I think the important thing is, we may be a little bit overshadowed by the greater efforts, but
Yeah.
that's okay. It'd be nice, as long as we have a picture for the Tree City USA application next
Yeah.
year, and the mayor gives a proclamation that includes something about Arbor Day. You'll probably be involved with this project anyway somehow, so if we can kind of get the
Maybe,
trees in there.
maybe we can have the Arbor Day observation as the official kickoff to the
Yeah.
beautification.
That's what I was
Oh,
thinking,
actually-
so that you'd get more
Right. If it's
press
just
on it too than
separated
if it
by-
happened on Saturday.
Yeah.
If it's just separated by one day, it's not going to make that much difference if we
Yes,
do it on
it's
Friday.
true. That's a really good suggestion,
Yeah,
don't you think?
yeah, having
Oh,
So
yeah.
it sounds
I
like
also wonder whether it wouldn't be good
They
to
mind?
bring in those
ask
people that are,
them, email.
Yeah.
have been sponsoring this beautification day as the people who
Mm.
sort of-
Yeah, it would be, because they would be OU students, and it would be really wonderful. It's fantastic that they've organized this beautification day. This would give them another little boost of
Support.
participation in a long-term thing. We might get some long-term participation by folks from OU.
They'd like to make it an annual event, I know that much. They want to have it every year. They'd like to just start it up and see if it can go.
Yeah, okay. Well, we need, it would be politic, however, to have the tree that's dedicated in the ground, speaking from 5 years of doing Arbor Days. If the tree's not there, it's
Yeah.
not good.
So what site?
Okay, Near East Side Neighborhood Association?
Well, that'd be one possibility. The other possibility is water polo. Maybe the university could give a site near to the natatorium.
Oh, that's sweet.
I know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I mean, there's.
Lily pads don't cook.
Frogs neither.
They provide very little shade,
Well, for
Frogs.
the fish.
aerial shade.
Actually, more important, I think, than the tree and the site of the stage is politicking with that group. and
Yeah.
Making sure that we're not usurping
Mhm.
their
Right.
event. But it would be good, this is a nationally recognized
Right.
observed holiday, and so they could be, I don't know, like, who knows?
But certainly, you could. I'm sure Ed would have a way to
Yeah, we could.
think of something for the AUP planting thing.
Yeah.
And use that as
Yeah,
if
fall
you wanted
back.
to. But I mean, talk to the water polo people, because I think it'd be a wonderful way to sort of really give them a boost if they wanted that.
Right, and if they're going to be involved in trees on beautification day, it will give them a chance to speak to that.
Yeah.
We could ask them to say a word or two about how trees fit in with their beautification.
How do we go about that? I mean, who's in charge of this group?
Michael Jones.
Michael Jones is the team captain. He's got an email address. I don't have it with me. I know we've been corresponding with him, both Albie and myself, and council.
So you've been in contact with him?
Email contact, I've never actually talked or,
I've talked to him a couple of times, and this is early on when he was putting the project together, so I don't even know what his list of projects are right now. So that's what needs to be dealt with.
yeah, they have been trying to contact us for some time, and, they've been moving toward us, I think that's
Yeah.
more correct. And toward everybody in the city. And the mayor met with the water polo team on Monday, did he? Or with Michael? Huh?
I don't know about that, no.
Yeah, I facilitated a meeting where townspeople talked about it before the council meeting, and they were still receiving
Ideas
input.
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was just a week ago.
The last email I had from him sounded like he had a pretty good bunch of things in hand, but that things were still developing. So, Paul,
What?
might you and I,
We can get together with him and talk to him.
Okay.
I'll send an email to him and see what kind of project he has. I thought they were supposed to have a website up right now for both input for volunteers and projects. I don't know what the status of that is. I know I got contacted by somebody else in the water polo team who was under the impression we hadn't been contacted yet as a city council member. So there's a little bit of disorganization on some level there, but I'm not sure what it is exactly.
Yeah.
So I've been hoping that they've gotten a little bit more organized at this point. They seem to think they're going to have the people. I know I went to the clean committee they volunteered to do work on with various beautification sites there, and they've been in front of council already once. So, and as you said, the conversation with council that time too.
yeah, and Jim Sands on council had said that there was some money being offered for
Oh,
the
yes.
West Arts landscaping work, perhaps to be done by them.
Actually, we're going to, city council has that Evelyn Luke's trust fund.
Is that still in existence?
It's been languishing for many years. It was only about, yeah, and the whole idea is that it, so we're kind of starting it up again. We're going to throw about 1,000, I think 500 to them, and about 100 to each of the neighborhood associations in terms of a project for that. And I think city council's actually kind of taken over to put about 100 towards Mill Street area too,
Yeah.
since there isn't any neighborhood association to deal with that. So the idea is to get projects that will, you know, if we need a tree, that's one place to purchase to get the money to do that.
Yeah.
That's the last I've heard about it. This was discussed last city council meeting.
Okay. It should be noted that the Tree Commission had, in its proposal for the West Arts landscaping, offered to put 3 trees in the front as part of the fall planting that we do, deciduous trees, which, of course, that's long-term, but that's
You mean right
something-
at the Y there or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was, at the Y and to the side slightly,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So, but-
I know that sign has been hit once or twice in the 20 years I've been here. That's why I was wondering where you're going to
Put
put
it
it.
behind the sign.
Yeah.
Some people just don't make the
Eventually-
turn.
Eventually it will get big enough.
Excuse me, I wanted to
One
ask
problem.
what you were talking about the site for this Arbor Day
We're,
situation.
this is still, there was a suggestion of the natatorium.
I see we had one listed here for the...
For the 173
East
State, if, that seems to be having communication problems of some sort. The tree's still there for one thing.
The one thing I thought of is that since this is a project to beautify the city, I kind of don't see the university as good a site.
Well,
Although we have done that. We did that one year. We recognized on the 200th anniversary of Ohio University, we did a dedication of trees on the bike path out near, straight out from the library. And OU had just planted 30-some trees in that area. And we recognized them for their plantings over the years by dedicating trees at that site. And that was the Arbor Day that year. Mark Whitney attended, somebody else from the university did.
I know some of the beautification projects will lap over to campus because the map they've drew was basically, you know, the entire interior part of the city. It doesn't go all the way out to, in fact, it doesn't include a lot of the south side past the river, I think, if my memory's correct. So there's certain sections of the town that aren't really slated for that. But we'll, you know, I think they're flexible on that. You know, the idea is to get the projects and find out what they are and how much are on campus versus off campus. I mean, if you're going to do a dedication and you want the entire organization there, the easiest thing to do is find out where, coordinate with them on their, you know, their spot where everybody's going to gather, and that's, you know, make that where the tree's going to be, or, you know, move that to where you want the tree. I mean, these are two possibilities. I mean, if you're talking about the natatorium and they're talking about South Green as a gathering place, you know, this,
Yeah, maybe it's a place.
Yeah, maybe
that
is-
could be, that's
Yeah.
not that far apart from each other, you know, so you start thinking in terms of, okay, can you move them this way a little bit, this way, this, and, you know, you end up with 200 people planting a tree or standing around one. That's a visual aspect of it, as well as awareness of Arbor Day for them. And I'm just speculating on it. We should talk to him, and part of the thing is I've been getting some emails from him, but I don't know where they are right now with everything.
Yeah. Okay, well, how does the commission?
Well, I would speak for putting in it would be better to have it be a shade tree. If we're going to do a planting. I mean, it's better.
We are the Shade Tree Commission.
Yeah, and it's just a good precedent, I think, so that people don't have a confusion in their mind with, you know, oh, small shrubs are good for.
You know who has been interested in trees over the last couple of years is on the Red Cross. I wonder if that's more on the east side, it's a little away from me. But I wonder if they're trying to develop a little park and it's been dormant for a while. That might be a spot.
Oh, that's a nice idea.
They
It's a
have-
public place.
Yeah,
and-
they're going to, that park would,
Yeah.
it's in limbo in part because they don't know what's happening to the contiguous property, which is where the
Retirement community.
center may or may not be at some point. And so
You might
they're
be
hanging
stepping in
fire on
some
that.
controversy.
What about a tree near the library annex? You know, they had to move some trees and.
Out on Columbus Road?
No.
Public
No,
library.
the annex to, not the university library annex.
county.
But the,
Yeah, on Home Street.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they did have some trees when they,
They should buy it.
Yes.
well, they might, the friend
They
might be
took down a
willing
lot
to
of
do
trees.
that.
Yeah.
That's true, they moved a lot of trees. There was a really nice grant that they got
They
from the
need
Athens
trees there. I mean,
Foundation.
there's no doubt.
Yeah.
Many of them died.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And they were definitely tree friendly, you know,
Yeah.
we might talk to them.
Yeah, and that actually would be a good gathering place for people who are working on the bike path, so that's the other way to get people around it when you're doing it.
Okay.
But anyway.
I want you guys to know though too, you know, just from Tree City USA's perspective, don't overthink. I mean, you guys got a lot going on for this Arbor Day. I think, don't go out of your way to add to the stress. I mean, I think we're already planting trees with AEP's and the neighborhood association's help. That'll certainly suffice. I mean, I think that, so maybe we don't need to worry too much if it gets overwhelming.
Well, this,
Talk to the water polo people and find out what they think.
okay, we'll start with water polo.
Both of us will contact and see who we can, what's going on with them. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, thank you very much. Well, we have one thing that as is conspicuous on the table and not being talked about. Because we're going to, we just got this, and we will be deciding.
Can I, real quick, I'm
Yes.
sorry, just really two quick and easy
Sorry.
things, because I know this will be involved. Next Thursday, Emily Wood is doing a program at the library on the emerald ash borer. And it'd be really important for the community at large, I think, to be aware of the emerald ash borer and its potential impact on ash trees throughout Ohio, and Athens included. So that's at the library at 7 o'clock. And then the other thing is Tree City USA, your award program, is set for that'll be April 25th. And so I'll just pass that around, your registration forms. And Candy, if you could take one, I did put one in the mail to the mayor. So that's it, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's good, thank you very much. Yeah, Emily's talk as well, we're going to. And people who want to go should send this to you by what deadline? By April
Try to get it to
18th?
me- Yeah.
During the day, and I can't get to it.
Yeah, I'll see.
Just get, yeah.
I don't know what day that is.
By April
I'll check.
18th, it'd be nice to have the checks. And typically, the city
Check
does
the date of the thing, the
cover your
25th.
registration, right? I mean, that's one of the things that I think the city can do to support your volunteer efforts.
Actually, no, they haven't, we've been doing it ourselves.
Well, that's something
In
to keep
truth.
for the minutes. I think that what a lot of municipalities do is they send one in for the municipality, and they pay for it just one, you know, there's one invoice from the city. That, and this just pays for the meal,
Yeah.
and for us renting the space and everything to have the event. But, you know, that's something you guys should think about, because it costs you money to drive and take off work, and it is $28 a person this time. But we're
Yes.
gonna see giraffes, you know, and rhinos, so.
Well,
Yeah.
if nothing
Yeah.
else, we should be reminded that this is tax deductible expense.
It is, yeah, it is, but it is something, you're representing the city. I know when the mayor goes to Columbus to the meetings, you know, that's probably covered,
Okay.
something to think about.
Well, our next Shade Tree Commission meeting is April 18th, so at that point, we should have a pretty good sense of who is willing to go.
Okay.
Very good. Ron, you have a...
You should go too, Ron. It's really fun.
Is he
that going to be
dressed?
at 9 in the morning?
I think so. We'll know. We'll find out from the guys in the control room. Okay, are there any other comments or questions on that? Okay, we have, Steve Pearson brought us a plan from for the Oblinus Hospital Castrop Center, and he's also put together minutes, made copies of the minutes from the initial viewing of this. We do not have to do this at this meeting, since it's only just arrived, and it'd be nice to have a little time to really look it over. It looks largely to be in conformance with the suggestions that we made at the October meeting of the Tree Commission, but I think we need some time to look at it a little bit more leisurely. So we're going to try to meet again for just a very brief period and have everybody have a chance to look at this before then.
Is this the existing building, or is this?
This is the Castrop Center, the new building.
Right, okay.
And right behind it is a parking lot that's being added.
Oh, okay.
And
And we made a series of recommendations, and at first glance, it looks as if they
Okay.
have taken up all of those. So we just need to have a little bit of time to think
Sure.
and make sure that that's what they've done, and then we can write a letter back to them saying,
Okay.
very good, please maintain them.
yeah, it looks fairly routine.
Yeah.
There
It looks
was,
like they didn't really change things, though.
they put in the species.
It was the species, there were questions over the species in particular.
Did
Honey
we
locust.
recommend irrigation at that time?
No, we didn't, but we might, that's not something that we have,
Well, we just need to remind them that
Well,
they have to
we might
maintain.
remind them and
Yeah.
look at the cost and mention the survival rate at Lowe's, those that
Yes.
had irrigation and those that didn't.
that's right, everything out front of Lowe's, which was irrigated, is alive, and everything behind it is dead. Yeah. Okay, let's see, is it possible to have this room for this coming Tuesday, very briefly, to make the final presentation of this, or do we even need to
I'm not sure you need to do.
bring ourselves together? It's such a routine submission, it's just making sure everything is, everybody gets a chance to look at this and make sure it's correct. Um, We all hate to meet.
I think unless you see problems, unless somebody objects to you, then I think we should just proceed as you indicated. We
Okay.
should all look at this,
Yeah.
and if no one objects, then you just proceed to write the letter.
Okay, if, let us set a deadline by this coming, I think by Friday even, we could have, everybody should have a chance to look at this. The
Well, I'm going to look
plans-
at it today.
Right now?
Right now, for the
The
meeting.
plans are going to be here for a little bit, and then they'll be down on Candy's desk behind it in the mayor's office area, and you can come in and look at this if, we've actually got 2 copies.
Should we do copies?
Right.
Just in case we're annotating
Yeah,
others.
I'm going to take one copy up with me, and we've got 3 tree commissioners up on the ridge, and one may have a little difficulty getting to see this before Friday if I don't
Okay.
do that. So
great.
Fine, yeah.
let me know by Friday at noon if you could, by email, what you compare your minutes and what you see on the map, and then I'll write the letter and Candy will send it out. Are there any other issues for the tree commission at this time? Paul, you have
You had a case coming up, the Brenningtons?
Bennigans?
Bennigans, yeah, what's going on with that? That's for next meeting, or? that's-
No, I've sent them a letter from the last
Okay.
meeting. They need to respond.
Okay, that's what we're waiting for,
Otherwise,
okay.
Steve will not give them a permit to operate, I think. Isn't that what happens, Steve, if they don't conform to the landscape ordinance? I'm looking at Steve Pearson at the moment.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. What happens if they don't conform to the landscape ordinance?
That's a good question.
Okay. Okay.
There's no penalty section.
But there is.
Well, it then falls onto the wide-ranging one.
Oh, we get to use that. doesn't it?
Yeah, he's going to use them.
There's a section in the Athens City Code that says any ordinance for which there is no penalty section
It refers it to a minor misdemeanor, which is a maximum $150 a day, each day being a separate offense.
But that would only apply after they start operating as a restaurant, presumably, would it?
Now, the penalties for operating without a zoning certificate are maximum $500 a day. There's a specific penalty section in the zoning code. Now, I can't deny the permit for use or for parking or for any of those other kinds of issues. So,
But
landscaping is a whole different thing. It has no relationship to the zoning code, or the only other part of the code that I know it has a relationship to is the planned unit development regulations say that the tree commission will review plans for any planned unit development. That's the only other reference to the landscape ordinance in any other section of the city code.
But in terms of coming into conformance with the landscape regulations, at what time during a building operation does that have to happen?
It doesn't say anything about it in the landscape ordinance. So I guess your question is, can I stop the use of the building if they don't conform to the landscape ordinance? And that's an issue that I'll have to discuss with the law director.
I would point out that in the landscape ordinance, which is Title 37, there is a section 3709, penalties, which we basically based upon the section in the code that you described, and it reads, A, failure to comply in case any person refuses to comply with an order issued pursuant to the above provisions. In addition to the penalties provided by the city code, the City of Athens may institute appropriate civil proceedings to enforce compliance with the order. B, penalties: any person violating a provision of this code shall be deemed guilty of a minor misdemeanor and fined not more than $100. Each day that a person continues to violate a provision of this code shall constitute a separate and complete offense, which is basically what you just said.
Yeah, so that's a little different. It's $100 a day instead of $150, which is the minor misdemeanor maximum.
But there is no obvious day at which you then start saying you are not in conformance, therefore we have to proceed.
Well, I think the first thing we have to see is if they respond to the letter and comply.
Yeah.
There are, just to be honest with you, there are several out there that have not up to this point, and this is the time of year when I'll be taking account of all of those. There's been a lot of notifications. I know last year I notified probably 4 or 5 different property owners that they weren't in compliance. Plus, we have additionally ones where trees that were planted have died and they need to be replaced. So, the potential for forcing people to comply is going to come to a head this spring. We're going to see if it really works or not. Because we're about, this is probably the 3rd year of the ordinance.
Let's see. No, it's
longer. Relatively speaking, it's a fairly new ordinance.
Yeah, 2002 is I think the amendment. 2001 was the initial.
So, no, have any prosecutions proceeded yet? No, they have not. But it's time to see, and I have the feeling that possibly Bennigan's might be the first one, although I'm not going to assume that. Hopefully they'll respond favorably to the correction letter.
They have difficulties with the company demanding such a large number of parking places, and the city itself does not require anywhere near that number of parking spaces for the restaurant, does it?
Right. I'm trying to remember my review, and we talked about this at the last meeting too. I was watching it this weekend, as a matter of fact. I think it was 25 parking spots is all they're required to have as a minimum. So anybody can have more than the minimum the city requires.
And they want 90?
They have it was in the upper 90s, and the reduction by creating landscaping only took it down to 87 or 88, but they claim their franchise would prefer that they have in the 120s. We had discussed overflow parking at the mall for, if they actually needed more parking, there was a potential to lease that parking right next door. And that's, I've never seen the franchise agreement for Bennigan's to see if that is in fact true. We discussed the maximum occupancy, which I think was in the 160s, and how many people might come to the restaurant in one vehicle. I mean, if you have 2 people come in one vehicle and they have 90 parking spots, that's more than the occupancy. So to be honest with you, I really don't get the idea, unless they think that a lot of people are driving there by themselves. So I personally don't think I mean, it's easy enough for them to meet the requirements, so we'll just see what happens.
Okay, the only reason why I was asking, because I took the time to cruise out there and take a look at the place, thinking it was going to be one of the topics.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to bring it up and have it heard as a case again here.
Sorry. Well, I missed it, and the minutes were brief on the subject.
No, it's good to, I think it's more clear cut, I think, than sometimes we think. I think it's the issue is that, it's on paper, our expectations are very clear, and we need the code enforcement. I think, though, that's their positions to make sure those things happen.
Yes.
I don't think.
Well, it sounds like one of the interpretations that need to be dealt with eventually is when a violation does occur. Is it when Steve notifies them of a nonconformity, or 30 days after that when they don't conform? And this would be something to think about. I guess really it's the law director's
The normal way this
interpretation.
proceeds is when there's a violation noted, they're sent you can call it anything you want, notice of violation, correction letter, whatever. Normally speaking, people are given then 30 days to comply. If they don't comply within 30 days, given a letter in another 30 days. That basically then says if you don't comply, the matter will be forwarded to the law director's office for further action. Normally the law director then sends another letter, gives another period of time. So what we're trying to do is continually seek compliance rather than prosecution. We're trying to, for example, we're trying to get trash picked up instead of writing trash tickets. It would be a comparable scenario. So it's not something where we just jump right to court immediately. And that's enforcement of any section of the code. Compliance is what's desired, not prosecution.
So the misdemeanor would be dictated by the court?
Right. It'd go to municipal court, and Judge Grimm would decide the penalty.
And he would decide when that penalty would start? Like, he would look at the evidence and everything and decide, oh, their building's already built, I'm going to start at the $100 a day, starting this day, is that right?
Yeah, I'd say
And
the
you could
opening
go-
day would be probably an agreeable point in time in which a violation had started.
No.
But again, that's all determined by the judge.
Okay.
A lot of times, when we do have prosecutions and people are found guilty, the judge reduces the amount of the fine. Essentially, if they're on good behavior for 2 years. So, some of that monetary penalty is reserved, hoping that the person will
Water the trees,
will
really.
not.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Thanks.
and sometimes those,
Yeah, that's helpful.
and I don't want people to think it doesn't happen. It happens quite frequently, as a matter of fact. I've had several prosecutions for violation of the zoning code for maximum occupancy recently, and one of them was a penalty of $10,000. And I've had several prosecutions where the court has found $5,000 in penalties. So it's not impossible to do. It's a lot easier if people voluntarily comply. It's quite a chore to get somebody all the way through the court system.
But didn't you get the landscaping ordinance complied with that Mexican restaurant on East State Street? Wasn't that a problem, ongoing problem
Yeah,
for
they
some time?
gradually planted.
Mhm.
And then they eventually...
Yeah, they,
Actually, the way some of that happened was I eat there on occasion. And I talked to the manager, and I said, Jeremy Vinegar, who worked at Panachinola at the time, presented a plan because he wasn't really too aware of it. And, I said, can you get a tree planted now, maybe one a little later, and, try to get up to speed with this. So, in between dinner and conversations with the manager, I got, getting closer to compliance. It's a lot easier to do that over dinner than over in court.
yes. Well, thank you, Steve, that's valuable, and thank you. And the meals are good at the restaurant.
And
Yes.
the meals cost less than the court. A whole lot.
They just plant trees, it's nice. Yes. Well, for the most part, we are seeing compliance, which is the big success story.
Okay, yes, that's
And
what-
What's that? Can you say that again?
for the most part, we see compliance.
Right.
And in fact, the ordinance has changed the landscape of the commercial development in Athens. There are now trees in parking lots, in the front of parking lots, that all these places finally look like places you would like to go, rather than oceans of asphalt that you're going to avoid any day in August if you can.
And in fact, it's one of the positive things about having businesses which are part of a chain, because a lot of those have in their budget landscaping.
Yes.
So it's disappointing that there's a problem in this case.
But I think they will see that it's good business to do the landscaping, and it would be really kind of a public relations error on their part to do something, to refuse to do something that other businesses in their immediate neighborhood are doing, and doing very well in many cases, just across the street at Lowe's. Not behind, of course, but out front. They do. Absolutely, the best in town, planted, irrigated, taken care of. Are there any other points about this? Steve, do you have any other things for us?
I think just for the public to know too, there's a modification to the landscape ordinance going through council right now. I don't believe it's passed yet, but the passage is imminent. And that's in addition to the section that requires retrofitting of existing parking areas. The language says that if you improve the value of a building greater than 50% of the auditor's value, then you have to essentially retrofit your parking lot. So if you add 25% to a parking lot, if you improve or not repave, but tear up a parking lot 25%, you have to retrofit. If you add 25% to the floor area of a building, you have to retrofit. And now if you improve a building, it doesn't have to get bigger. This was actually a consequence of the remodeling of the Athens Mall, where they reduced the area by tearing the front of the building off and essentially incorporating the old interior hallway into those storefronts. There was a question about, was a requirement that they retrofit the parking lot. And so this revision is kind of a reaction to that. It wasn't covered. There was nothing about, because they didn't expand the parking area, or very slightly in the front, not anywhere near 25%. And they actually diminished the area of the building. But now there's going to be a section that says if you improve a building more than 50% of its value, you'll have to go back and put some trees in the parking lot.
Was that over a certain period of time? Do you remember?
No.
Because we
We
had
didn't.
discussed that.
Right.
Right. There's discussion, and some of the examples of what the language could be I'd provided to you from different sections of other codes. What you're talking about is something that the state recommends as the possibility in flood hazard areas to have what they call cumulative improvement costs. Cumulative substantial improvement is what they call it. So you're allowed to improve a building X percentage over X number of years. Say no more than 50% in a 5-year period, or no more than 25% over 2 remodels in a 10-year period. But right now, the language is just a one-time. One time. You look at the auditor's value, you look at the estimated cost of improvement. If it exceeds 50%, then you're required to go back and retrofit.
And this would be on your zoning certificate, because they usually say they're going to modify it by X amount and improve it by X amount, right?
Right.
So.
And that's what the clarification language is about, is what was the baseline going to be? How are we going to estimate what the existing value of the building was? And we finally decided we just have to take the word of the developer, what the cost of improvement was. But we'd use the auditor's value as the baseline for comparison. So just so everyone knows, that's pending legislation, should be passed probably within just the next couple of
I think it's on its
sessions of
second
council.
reading. Third reading will be next Monday, I think.
But it doesn't have language for cumulative.
No. No, in
And the
response to the question,
cumulative
no.
is actually put in there so somebody doesn't come along and do 10%, 20%, 20%, 20% over the years
Right.
to avoid.
Yeah. And in situations where you do have these kinds of thresholds, one time where you do have cumulative records, normally there are also sections about what kind of work can be permitted that wouldn't be noted. Maintenance type work, roof repairs, painting, pavement restoration, new lighting, those kinds of maintenance kinds of issues are not included normally.
Right.
When you keep that running list of total cost. That's true. That's another example where the floodplain regulations have a section that talk about what is not considered improvement. So there's like a definition of maintenance, which is an exempt category from permitting.
Are there any other questions, comments?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I did have just one other thing, if that's all right. You're talking about citizens wondering where their property lines were and how to locate their property line or the right-of-way. And it's not a mysterious thing to do. I'll give you the secret on how the code office does it. It's real easy. We have tax plats at our office, which are not surveys, but they're very accurate, and they're reflective of subdivisions as they were platted. If you go, in order to access county tax plats and city tax plats, you go to athensgis.com. That's the county engineer's website. And there'll be several ways that you can look at things. If you want to look at the tax plats, you want to click on current mapping. There are two things you can click on, current and historical. You want to click on current. On the right-hand side, there's going to be a drop-out box. You want to punch the arrow, and a list is going to drop down, and you want to pick either Athens North or Athens South. And what that does is it takes you to the county's website to show you the tax plats, the 1 to 50 scale tax plats. And you just keep clicking on the squares until you find your neighborhood. It's real easy, shows you the streets, and you just keep going until you find your neighborhood. And it'll show you the width of the area dedicated to public use or the public right-of-way. And it's marked. If it's a 50-foot, 60-foot. Normally at my office, we just assume that the pavement's in the center of the right-of-way. 26 feet of pavement and a 50-foot right-of-way, we just assume 13 feet out on each side of the curb is where that line's at. What you can do then is back out of the screens, go to the initial screen and click on Find a Parcel. And as soon as the map loads up, you can type your name in, or anybody's name. And it will take you right to your lot. Then you can click on Aerial Photograph, and it'll actually superimpose an aerial photograph over top of that plat. Now, this may not be exactly right. It's just kind of a reference point. What they do is when the tax plats are digitized and layered in with the aerial photograph, there's a process called rubber sheeting that they use to reconcile it. I mean, even at a minimum, the curvature of the earth would cause a two-dimensional plat not to work. And it gives you a really good idea of where the line is. A lot of times it's obvious that that's not where it is. If it goes right through your house, that's not it.
You hope.
The best thing to do is use the tax plats first. Also, when properties are financed or refinanced, banks usually require a survey. So you may be able to walk up and down the street and actually find a surveyor's pin, which is the only true and accurate location of where a property line or the right-of-way might be. Another rule of thumb is if it's a utility line parallel to a street, more likely than not, that utility line or those utility poles are right on that line. When you were talking about the tree out at 175 East State, out on East State Street, I'm picturing driving by, I see the tree with the lopped off side. The utility lines are toward the street side. So the tree as it exists is probably 10 to 15 feet back on the property. And up 99 out of 100 times, the utility company locates their poles right on the line. The only time that you're going to have a pole on your property is if it's for a service drop, where it actually comes off the right-of-way. There may be cases where those utility poles are further into the right-of-way and not on the property line, but normally they're very close. As a matter of fact, if you go around some neighborhoods, you might see iron railroad spikes driven in the side of a pole. That's where a surveyor has not been able to set a pin for the property line because the pole's right on, on top of where it should be. So that's a lot of times why you'll see a railroad spike or some kind of large object, metal object, nailed right into the side of a utility pole.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, and go out and check. If you're doing something with a tree in the right-of-way, you need a permit. And if you're doing something on your property, hopefully you'll consult with the Tree Commission as an advisory committee to help you with the kinds of things you're going to do on your private property.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. I think at this point we have covered everything on the agenda. If nobody has any other things, please note that we're meeting again on the third Tuesday of the month, which would be April 18th. And we hope to have this room from 9 to 11, since we seem to have a pattern. I think we'll hear from the gentleman in the control room of the government channel to find out if they have confirmed that's really possible. Anything else? No. Okay, the meeting's adjourned, and I have some tree commission goodies.